Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
To Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Busy first hour talking transfer portal, talking LSU hoops, talking Derek Carr injury, Saints, and some college basketball as well. A lot of football here in hour number 2. Denton Day talking national college football picture 30 minutes from right now. So we've got plenty to get to. I want to start with the college football playoff being revealed yesterday. And I want to say this first because I think this is the most important thing. I love a 12-team playoff. I loved its impact on the regular season, and I think these matchups are awesome to look at on paper. I think just the concept of a playoff game between Clemson and Texas in Austin is awesome. Tennessee going to the Shoe to play a playoff game is awesome. The in-state rivalry between Indiana and Notre Dame, I think, is fascinating. This is much better than the first system, which was just play bowl games and a vote on a national champion. This is much better than the BCS. This is much better than a 4-team playoff. This is awesome on its face. A 12-team playoff rocks. However, I cannot look at a system that has buys built in for Boise State and Arizona State. I'm sorry. I cannot allow for it. Boise State has spent the last 3 months playing Utah State and UNLV and Hawaii. And they are the 3 seed in a college football playoff. That ain't it. Absolutely broken. Yes, I am an elitist. Yes, I'm an LSU guy who has watched football played at the highest level in the Southeastern Conference, and I have an inherent bias toward that. That is on the table. We're not going to discuss it or argue about it. It just is. But I cannot have a team play in that conference, the Mountain West, whatever it is, and get a bye. That is broken. Cannot happen. And I'm sorry, Big 12, you don't get a bye either. That's not the Big 12. The Big 12 had Texas and Oklahoma in it. This just has the same name. But you don't get a bye the same way the American doesn't get a freebie. There's just no way. No way. I know Scattaboo runs really hard, and that's fun. He's got a big head. Everybody's watching on. No auto bid for you either. We've got to scrap that. I cannot look at a bracket that has Boise State and Arizona State scatting by because they don't play anyone who's good. That doesn't work for me. Now, I know that all of the discussion and all the angst has been about SMU and Indiana and the strength of schedule and Alabama and South Carolina and all this kind of stuff. I know that that's been all the hubbub, and I'll have some thoughts on that as well. But the biggest takeaway I have is we've seen this for the first time, and I was going to let it all kind of play out before I gave scorching hot takes on any of it. But now it's played out, and I can't look at that. I cannot look at free passes being given to schools that don't play anybody who's good. You have to fix that moving forward. And I think the way you've got to do it is to scrap the auto bids. Now, that drives people crazy because everybody wants a chance, and we got to give everybody a trophy, and it's not fair. Screw it. We have enough data. We understand how this sport works. There are some schools that play at an elite level. There are some schools that don't. And the schools that don't cannot be afforded the same benefits as the ones that do. I'm not here to state Alabama's case over SMU because as I knew in August before we started this thing, if you miss a 12-team playoff, you have yourself to blame. In Alabama, Oklahoma bites, and they kicked your butt. So you don't get to complain. You don't get to sit there and complain. Just the way it is. Georgia got a worse deal than you in terms of the schedule. They made it work. So I don't even care about that discussion But what I will say is that you need to get the committee together and you need to rank them 1 through 12. The auto bids for conference champions, I don't care about. It's the only data point that doesn't put everyone on equal footing, because you're telling me that Texas playing Georgia in the Georgia Dome is the same as Boise playing UNLV in Boise. That's not the same. These should not be rewarded equally. I don't care about conference championships. Give me the best teams. And I came up with a bracket. 1 through 12. Don't care about conference affiliation. This is the tournament that I'd want to see. If you put me in charge of college football and we were going to have to crown a champion, here's how I would have seeded them. Oregon 1, Georgia 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, Tennessee 5, Ohio State 6, Notre Dame 7, South Carolina 8, Ole Miss 9, Alabama 10, Clemson 11, Miami 12. Miami's got a good quarterback. They shouldn't be in this field because they lost 2 games and their defense is terrible. But I don't care about watching Indiana play. I don't care about watching Boise State. I don't care about watching Arizona State. And they'll be gone pretty quick anyway. It doesn't really matter because when we boil this thing down, you're going to end up with Oregon and Georgia and Ohio State near the end. That's my opinion. Tennessee, potentially, but I don't think they're going to get through that. So they're not going to be relevant when you get to the Final Four in the final game. But I don't have any interest in watching TCU in the championship game anymore. So I'm just going to leave all of them out. I've got how many Big Ten teams? 1, 2, 3. 3 Big Ten teams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 SEC teams. A couple ACCs and Notre Dame. And that's the way I'd like to see them play it off. They're never going to do that because people are afraid to get up there and say, hey, we don't respect your garbage conference. I don't really care. And that's seen as the wrong way to go about it. And I'm 100% certain that Jacob Hester, who knows more football than I'll ever know, would sit right in that chair next to me and tell me that I'm a moron. That's okay. I'm here for that. I just don't care about watching Arizona State play any more football. I don't care about watching Indiana play football. Indiana is here not because they're a great football team. They're here because the Big Ten office did them a favor, accidentally. And they got one chance to step up, and they didn't do it. And people are sit here and say, well, Boise State played Oregon close. Well, that was 3 months ago, and they hadn't done anything since then. So I just don't really care to see that. My opinion was that Boise was going to get shipped to a road game this whole time. Well, now they're the 3 seed because Clemson backdoored their way in here, and you got the Big 12 that fell behind them. I just don't have any use for that. Am I a nutback? Am I an elitist who needs to turn his microphone off?
I mean, you certainly are giving the elitist take, if you will.
Yes.
But let's just I'm not going to say I disagree with you, but let's just let the games play out and see what happens. Okay, that's my view on it. Like, let's see how it plays out, and let's say in the next 3 years we see the Boise States and the Arizona States and the SMUs make it in the playoff and they get beat by 20 every game. Then just stop. Then the committee will have no reason to continue to do this. But for now, let them do it. And if it blows up in their face because these teams keep getting beat by 3 touchdowns in these playoff games, maybe they'll get wiser to it and they'll realize, maybe they won't.
I think it'll be quicker. I think they may do away with the auto conference thing next year.
Yeah, no, I don't
think anyone could have forecasted what we're looking at here with Arizona State and Boise State.
No, definitely not. I mean, especially
you would have thought it was going to be Oregon or Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, and I don't even know what they were expecting. Notre Dame. Notre Dame can't do it. Notre Dame can't do it. I don't know what they're expecting out of the Big 12. That's probably my biggest point of contention here is there are some teams in the ACC that can show up in a given year and be really, really good. Clemson and Florida State certainly have shown that. Miami, I think, has every opportunity to be a really, really good team. There is no one in that Big 12, not one program that I feel comfortable will ever win a 12-team playoff. Not once. And if that's the case for your league, and you can tell me, well, you're just projecting that. You have no way to prove that. Well, but we have a lot of data points here. And in a league, if I'm looking up at Iowa freaking State and Arizona State playing for something that is on level footing with Georgia and Texas, I can't sleep with that. I can't.
And no, I understand your sentiment, but again, I just don't know how, because the playoff was all dependent on getting all these conferences to agree on the terms. And you can just say, oh, well, if the Big 12, let's take away the Big 12 auto bid, and maybe they'll throw their hands in the air, and you don't
get a choice.
No, okay, I understand, but I don't know if like what can the agreement. I don't know how long the agreement is in place for these auto bids. I don't know if they can. I'm sure there's probably a way that they can finagle it and get rid of it. But I think that depending on what happens this year will very heavily affect what they do going forward. But
in my dummy bracket that I made up, the teams lost too many games to make it into the real bracket, but this would be a way better bracket. Here are the matchups that we would get. We would get Miami at Tennessee for the right to play Penn State. We would get Clemson at Ohio State for the right to play Texas. We would get Bama at Notre Dame for the right to play Georgia, and Ole Miss at South Carolina for the right to play Oregon.
Okay, so but you still think
you can't do it because there has to be penalty for losing games.
Yeah, but also you would still have Clemson in even with their are you saying there's still auto bids, or are you just saying,
there's not auto bids.
Okay, so then why is Clemson in?
Honestly, I look at that league and the fact that they won it, and in this data point, I would in this when I'm the czar, I'm making up my own rules. I would go, okay, you won the ACC, that's fine, I'll put you in. Okay. I mean, because at that point down the list, I think my options there are going to be some sort of Indiana or Arizona State. I
get it.
Honestly, it's probably just Clemson's won some national championships lately. They've got some 5-star recruits and guys that are going to go in the first round.
Okay.
I'll give them they're the second to last spot.
All right.
That was the non-scientific way that I roundabouted that.
Fair enough.
It's probably a brand thing. And look, I admit that if we're talking 8% of this take is just laughably stupid. But I think that it's rooted in a foundation that is correct. And so
I do want to say though, I think the elitist take in football is it makes sense, because when you look at basketball and baseball, you can have underdog teams that can actually succeed just because the playing field is a little bit more even as opposed to football.
In football, the better team wins far more often than basketball.
Yes. But we still do see that there can be upsets in football. It happens in the first few weeks of the season every year. And TCU, it happens all the time. So I don't want to agree with you fully on the elitist side and saying that there's these teams that just don't deserve to get in. Let's let them get in for at least a few years and see if one of them can pull off an upset. And if they can, let's keep doing that, because that's what makes basketball and baseball so great.
Yeah, in basketball, that first weekend, they win, and they're never around for the second weekend, and certainly not around by the time you get to the third weekend for the Final Four, and that's when the big boys show up. And I think that's going to be the case here when we get to the Final Four. I think you're going to have, very likely to me, Texas, Oregon, Georgia, and probably Penn State. Is probably what it's going to look like, and then you'll probably get to the end, and we're probably going to get Oregon and Georgia. It's what it feels like. Now, Carson Beck is a big question mark here, and we'll see how that kind of shakes out. But that's what it feels like to me, and that'll be great theater. But I did start the segment, even though I've complained for the last 12 minutes of it. The concept is great. It just needs to be tweaked.
Yeah,
that's the take here. I tweeted this out I have no sympathy for South Carolina and Alabama and Ole Miss. You lost to teams you don't need to be losing to. To a lesser extent, South Carolina, but they didn't step up and win the games they needed to win. In Alabama, you can't lose to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. You don't get to complain about that.
Ole Miss, you can't lose to Kentucky.
Yeah, that's just egregious. It's the only game they won all year in the league. So yeah, you don't get to complain when you lose that game. But I do have to sit here and look at when I see a Boise State Bronco helmet sitting there with a 3 next to it. I'm going, we gotta tweak this. You can't get the 3 seed because you beat Hawaii. That doesn't jive with me. So we'll talk to Denton Day about all of it coming up in 15 minutes. Don't go anywhere. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio Video Security Solutions, AVSSLA.com is the website. They make things so easy over there at Audio Video Security Solutions. My wife and I are technologically inept. I've told you that many, many times, but we've got some technology in the house now that they've put in that we can operate quite well. And that's because the folks at Audio Video Security Solutions installed it fantastically, explained it fantastically. So all of our speakers they installed, they hung all of our televisions in the outdoor area where the Myers man likes to play some baseball. We've got the ability to play some great tunes out there with some speakers. It sounds fantastic, and the customer service after the installation has been sensational for us as well. Start your process today. Give Mitchell Fisher a call. The beauty of it, this is his cell phone number. He's the owner of the company. He's going to be your point person to start that process, whatever the project may be. It's 225-439-7920. 225-439-7920. Give Mitchell a call. Tell him what you're trying to do. He'll be sure to get you started on the right foot. You can also check him out online at avssla.com. Invite you to check out the Instagram because it's got great examples of some of their capabilities. Audio, video, security, all of it is right there at avss_BR. It's Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Did you jump the gun there with that phone call?
Yeah, the listeners don't know this, but I just called Denton Day, and we have him in the next segment. So
At least he's prepared. Sometimes you never know if they're going to pick up.
Yeah, he was ready.
He's ready to rock.
Guess he thought we were just 9 minutes early. That's all there is to it.
We're never 9 minutes early.
No, never. But we're not 10 minutes late.
That's true. And that can be an issue for some folks. I've said this many times. I don't know how many Emmys I'm going to win or how many awards. Yeah, I don't know. What that's going to look like over the course of my career. I don't know if I'm the funniest radio host that's ever lived or the smartest. I don't know if I have the best voice of all time. But I can stay on the clock.
Oh yeah,
I can stay on the clock on a radio show,
and that is important, Hunt.
And we make that happen. David Rosher, who's in sales, nobody cares about this at all, but he said he really enjoys my show because the only thing he does is go look for his clients' live reads, and he always knows exactly where they're going to be on my show because I'm always right on time on the clock. So
always.
You got it, Rosher. Let's talk a little bit briefly about this story that is got legs. I said on Friday that I would give up every penny to my name if North Carolina hired Bill Belichick to be their head coach. That was probably a stupid thing to say because it sounds like they might. Bill Belichick was on with McAfee today, and he said that he met with North Carolina for 5 hours on Saturday. And Belichick kind of elaborated on what his potential is in the college game. He said that a lot of colleges are looking at the NFL-type models to structure personnel and coaching, and the job is too big for one person. You've got to have a general manager. You've got to have a coach. You've got to have a salary cap manager. And he obviously has come from that world where you have to deal with moving money around, and you've got to make sure that your roster is complete, and you deal in financial terms. And now that's what the college game is like. As I try to give this a little bit of credence, because I dismissed it so quickly on Friday, I guess if you're North Carolina, the pitch is that you can bring in the greatest football coach ever, the most accomplished football coach ever, to run the program for 4 or 5 years. I mean, he's in his 70s, so it's not like this is going to be a 10 or 12-year contract here, but you could bring in a guy who obviously knows a lot of football and who gives you instant credibility within your organization. If you're Belichick, I guess he's just not going to care about the transfer portal and the NIL stuff. Like, a lot of that is recruiting is, for lack of a better term, like sucking up to 17, 18-year-old kids. And now when they get to campus, it used to be a process of de-recruiting and being tough. And now you kind of have to continue to stay on their good side because they can leave so quickly. And I just can't see Bill Belichick coaching that way. I can't see Bill Belichick being the happy-go-lucky, always recruiting, high-energy football coach that we feel like you need to be at this point. Bill Belichick doesn't have any Dan Lanning in him. He just doesn't. I don't see any of that, and I just don't know why he would subject himself to this never-ending grind that has run other accomplished coaches out of the sport. And not even just football. Like Tony Bennett bailed. Obviously on the basketball side, you saw Jay Wright bailed, Nick Saban bailed. I mean, guys that are at the top of the sport just can't handle the consistent grind that it takes to build a program and sustain it. And I just have a hard time seeing that that's what he wants to jump into here. The just nightly phone calls for recruiting and constantly concerning yourself with boosters and who's writing checks where and where we can allocate the funds and speaking engagements, not to mention the game planning, running camps and all that kind of stuff. And I guess as I kind of talk my way around all this, maybe Bill Belichick's just not going to deal with all that stuff. They're going to hire somebody to do it. I'll hire somebody to run the camps. I'll hire a recruiting coordinator. I'll be the closer. I'm not getting on the plane. He's at a point where he doesn't have to prove himself. If it doesn't work out in a year or two, he just quit. But maybe he'll just hire a staff and he'll coach the team, and that'll be all he worries about. You couldn't get away with that at a place that has national championship aspirations. But if you're North Carolina and you're just trying to be a little bit better than mediocre, which is what they've kind of been my entire life, he's giving you kind of an opportunity to do that. We've seen this model. They did it with Mac Brown. Herm Edwards was kind of this way. We've seen some different programs try this out. I'm just trying to see it from both sides and see if it makes any sense. I'll tell you this. If I'm North Carolina, there's no way I'm doing it. No way. North Carolina has money. They're in a conference that they can compete in. They're in a talent-rich state, and they can be a competitive ACC program if you get the right guy in there. I don't think Mac Brown's the right guy. I wouldn't try it on a 70-plus-year-old Bill Belichick. It didn't make any sense at all to me when this news initially broke, but I guess it just would be a little bit of a different situation than what everybody else in college football is trying to do, and maybe it works. We'll see. Becky, got any thoughts on Bill Belichick going to the North Carolina?
Yeah, it sounds preposterous, but like you said, apparently it's not. I don't think that it would work.
I mean, can you see him making phone calls at 8:30 at night to high school juniors?
No, and it's just weird. But maybe he's one of those guys, because to me it's why would you you weren't doing very well at the Patriots your last few years, so you left and retired, and you got a pretty cush gig now. You're probably making some decent money.
He's got enough money.
He's got enough money, so the money's obviously not the reason, but he just must be one of those guys that wants to be able to prove that he can do it, and people say that he probably can't. I don't think he will succeed. I don't know, this is going to sound crazy, but I've never thought super highly of Bill Belichick just because of what happened after Tom Brady left. And now he's still a good coach, but I just don't think that he's going to have the chops to do it in college football, and especially in college football that's completely different and is just not suitable for older guys usually.
I think he can coach football, and I think he would be a good game day coach for North Carolina. But this sport is about roster composition, and that's the most important thing. Mario Cristobal can't coach out of a wet paper bag, and they almost made the playoffs this year because he went and got a bunch of good players. They went and got Cam Ward. You've got to go get dudes, and I'm just not convinced that Bill Belichick is going to do that. No. And so then I don't know if you can put a staff together to go do it without the head coach doing it. I just don't know if that works. So we'll see if anything comes of it. He was hinting at it on the McAfee show today. I think it would be a pretty foolish decision by a lot of people involved, but it would be fascinating. That's for sure. So we'll ask Denton Day about it coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com. How about this? 10 years, 100,000 miles for your warranty. 10 years. Most of us don't even drive a car for 10 years. So essentially, for the life of that vehicle, it's under warranty. 100,000 miles under warranty. And how about complimentary maintenance? Do that too for 3 years with every new Genesis that you buy from the folks at Genesis of Baton Rouge. Reminder, they're the only fully exclusive Genesis dealer in the state. It's right here in Baton Rouge. give Genesis a try. Put it on your list. The second you get behind the wheel of one of those vehicles, you'll sense it. It's a luxury vehicle at a reasonable price. Check out that inventory. It's online at genesisofbatonrouge.com, but I highly invite you to get on by the store. It is first class in every way. You're going to feel like a guest when you're there. You're not going to feel like a customer. And if you can get behind the wheel of that new Genesis, you're going to be driving off the lot, and I can promise you that. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every car on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
30 minutes to go here on a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products, GCOPnet.com, GCOPnet.com. All your printing, scanning, copying needs, Gulf Coast Office Products. Baton Rouge Business Report, them number one among office product distributors in the Baton Rouge area. No surprise. They're awesome folks, some great partners here at the Hunt Palmer Show. It's Gulf Coast Office Products. Check them out online, GCOPnet.com. All right, I've given my diatribe on the college football playoff rankings. I told you that I think that it's ludicrous that Boise State would get a 3 seed. I don't think the Big 12 champion should been an auto qualify in because I don't think that conference merits any real respect at this point with its 2 flagship members bolting for the SEC. But that's all my thoughts on the situation. Let's talk to a guy who's probably got a little better perspective on it. That's Denton Day, SiriusXM's College Football Overtime, with us each and every Monday. Denton, we appreciate some time. How are you?
Hunt, I'm good, man. We finally got our 12. Hooray for that.
Okay, let's talk about the 12. How do you feel about it?
I think these are the right 12 teams based off of how they're doing this. I have always had the stance that going from 4 to 12 was aggressive and there were going to be some issues, but I think the 12 teams are the right 12 teams.
How about the seeding of said 12 and the structures of the bye, namely Boise State getting the 3 seed?
I mean, I get Boise State. I would have made them the 4 seed. I think Arizona State's better than they are. I think Arizona State has proved that they are better than Boise State is. The seeding is going to be a massive problem. They need to fix it. I understand, and I agree with winning your conference championship gets you in. I don't agree with the idea that winning your conference championship gets you a bye. I think you could just get the 12 teams in and then reseed them from there, and then your top 4 seeds get a bye. And just because you won the Group of 5 or the Big 12 or whoever doesn't mean you should automatically get a bye. So I don't love that element of it. I would have put Arizona State above Boise State. I more likely than not would have put Ohio State above Penn State. They beat Penn State. They now each have the same amount of losses. You still get a home game either way, but Penn State now has this, I don't want to say cakewalk necessarily, but they get SMU, and then if they beat SMU, they get Boise, and then they're in the semifinals, whereas Ohio State, if they beat Tennessee, they get Oregon. It almost feels unfair to Oregon to have that be the setup there. So I would have reseeded once you got your 12.
I don't think, and that seems so easy to me, because there's no one who's going to equate winning the Big 12 with winning the SEC or the Big 10. Those 2 accomplishments are not equal, and in my opinion, and they're given equal standing for that. And I just don't know if anyone's got the guts to stand up and say that and change it. Do you think that's going to happen?
Somebody needs to. Somebody needs to. There's too much money involved in this to do this a dumb way, right? And if we're going to do the 12 teams here, do it smart. Like I think this year, I hope this year is going to be viewed as more of the trial run. You obviously have something good. I mean, there are a lot of games in the late portion of the season that maybe those of us who are super focused on college football playoff wouldn't have cared about if it was just 4 teams. So I think that we did see a rise in importance of, and I think that was a big benefit. But now that you've got this first year under your belt and you can do the thing where just because you win the conference, you can still be the 12 seed or still be the 8 seed or whatever it is and not justify it with a first round bye. I hope somebody is smart enough to say, look, we did this, didn't work. Let's make an adjustment, keep this moving, maximize what we have going on here.
And there's no question that if you would have told me entering August, hey, in the first round, you're going to get Tennessee in the shoe, you're going to get Clemson going to Austin, I'd be like, that is what I signed up for. This is awesome. And I think that it's still going to be incredibly compelling. My elite brain, my LSU grad, 3 national championships in my back pocket, seeing the elite of the sport, looking at the screen and seeing a 3 next to Boise State's name makes my skin crawl a little bit. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's the wrong way to look at it, but I can't help it.
No, it's the correct way of looking at it. There is not a single person in this world, maybe outside of Boise, maybe they're a little bit drinking the Kool-Aid, the Bluefield Kool-Aid, but there's not a single person that thinks they're the 3rd best team. So the fact that they have that 3 seed is just ludicrous. It's ridiculous. Like we have such a great example of this, literally in basketball. I mean, NC State won the ACC last year and still wasn't like a number 1. Like they were like a 6 or an 11 or something like that. Like you won the conference, you earned your spot, but we're going to seed you the right way based on what we think you are, what you've shown us you are for this entire season, and not just give you the benefit of the doubt because you won a conference championship.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of the football. Penn State, what do we make of Penn State? I thought they were competitive with Oregon, but they just never win.
But their defense is bad. They never win. I mean, it's the James Franklin curse.
They never win.
If you bet on Penn State this weekend, you're a fool for that. I had Oregon. I actually adjusted the line, so I got a little bit more of a bang for my buck there. Oregon was obviously the right side, but the thing is, I actually came away from that game really pleased with the offense of Penn State. The problem is the defense got completely wrecked. I mean, they couldn't do anything with Tez Johnson. And Tez Johnson hasn't had the best season at Oregon, but he is a really good player, and he put that on display. He was their absolute nightmare. This is just par for the course for James Franklin. And, he's in a very unique situation now because you get SMU and then potentially Boise State. If Penn State loses to SMU, I don't see a way that he comes back. I mean, that might be the tipping point. Like, all right, you lose to Oregon, you lose to Michigan and Ohio State during the season, whatever. You lose to Oregon, all right, Oregon's really good. But if you lose to SMU and then potentially Boise, what is your program doing? Where's the benefit in having this guy as the head coach if he can't beat those 2?
That's fascinating. Is Ryan Day under some pressure to make a run here?
Yes, but less pressure because they get a matchup with Tennessee. And while I don't feel great necessarily about Tennessee and their offense, it is still a big enough program to where it wouldn't tank him. I still think he should, prioritize winning. And I honestly think if they get to Oregon and see Oregon again, I almost might lean Ohio State. I did think they played really well against Oregon early in the season. And I think the winner of that game between Ohio State and Oregon potentially is going to win the national championship, especially with the injury to Carson Beck. I mean, I guess we're awaiting another MRI on his elbow, but if he's not going to play, I don't think he's particularly good, but I really don't think the backup for him is spectacular. So this whole thing is so wide open. I think Ohio State has a great opportunity to take advantage of it. And I think Ryan Day, he better get his big boy pants on. You got to go win some games against some good teams.
Is Arizona State any good?
I do like them. I think Cam Scadaboo is really fun to watch. And for those that maybe didn't get to watch a lot of Arizona State this year, I think you're going to see a running back. It's funny. You'll love this. We have a text message group chat with some people at Sirius, and the group chat was blowing up because Cam Scadaboo looks like the long-lost brother of Jacob Hester. I mean, everything about them are the same, from the way they run, the beard, like everything. He is literally just a mini Jacob Hester. So getting to watch him is going to be fun. Elsewhere, I mean, they're not like a spectacular defensive team. They're not a spectacular offensive team outside of Scadaboo, but he's a fun player, and he can win you some games.
Clemson, Texas is the other matchup, and we'll get more in-depth into this in a couple of weeks right before they kick it off. But early thought, Texas is an 11-point favorite in Austin in that game.
I must be missing something. And what is Texas? I mean, I don't think Clemson is spectacular, but what has Texas done on offense to think they're an 11-point favorite over anybody maybe other than SMU or Boise State? I've been so disappointed with them. I mean, they couldn't beat a Georgia team with a backup quarterback. You couldn't beat Georgia at home. You then couldn't beat them on a neutral site where they had their backup quarterback in for the second half. I love Sark. Quinn Ewers has been a disappointment this year. I would say he's been the biggest disappointment in college football. I had such high hopes for him, and offensively, they are bland. They're just not a fun team to watch. I've already bet Clemson. I got them at 10.5, so I maybe should have waited 2 hours to get them at 11. I've already bet Clemson, not to win the thing, but I think they're I don't see Texas blowing anybody out in the college football playoff. So I think Clemson's going to keep it close.
We shall see. We'll talk a little bit more about all of it as we move forward. We'll do it again next week. Denton, thanks, man.
I appreciate it.
Denton Day, Sirius XM's college football overtime. He's with us every Monday on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Again, I'm fired up to watch Texas and Clemson play in Austin. I could not be more excited to watch Tennessee and Ohio State in the shoe, and I think Indiana Notre Dame is interesting with that in-state aspect of it. Somebody said that this is going to be the first time. I saw a tweet. It makes a ton of sense. They're not in a conference. They can do whatever they want with their television. ABC, ESPN will broadcast Indiana Notre Dame from South Bend. It'll be the first time Notre Dame has played at home on any channel outside of NBC since the 70s. So it makes a ton of sense. They've had an NBC contract for a very, very long time, and they're not in a conference, so nobody comes in and tells them what they've got to do. But that's a wild deal. So I'm fired up to watch that as well, and then we'll get to those second-round matchups. You give me Tennessee and Oregon, Ohio State and Oregon, I'm all in on that. I think that's great stuff. So I'm a little bit gun-shy with how the process came to be, and you've got Arizona State and Boise with buys, and I just don't think that's a reasonable thing to do when you suggest what they've accomplished this season. But that's something we can discuss, I guess, further on another day. We'll step aside one more time. We'll come back and close out a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Make LeBear's Baton Rouge your game day headquarters this season. Watch all the games on their giant screen TVs. Tackle the area's best game day food and beverages with all of your friends. And get in on the football and basketball action this winter with Penn Play and ESPN Bet. Penn's online sportsbook is now live in Louisiana. Score big this season at LeBear's Baton Rouge. However you want to play. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 for help.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
.45 ESPN Baton Rouge and Citizens Bank and Trust are bringing you the ultimate holiday gift with our Home for the Holidays sweepstakes. Imagine 2025 with your rent or mortgage covered up to $18,000. We're here to make your holidays a whole lot brighter. Just sign up at 1045ESPN.com and you can be living stress-free next year. The winner will be notified on December 20th.
All right, so a little interesting development here over the last hour or so. On Friday, there was a report that Demarion Johnson was joining 3 other LSU Tigers in jumping in the transfer portal. And then Demarion Johnson was like, no, I'm not going in the transfer portal. And so everybody's like, oh, yeah, our bad. He's not going in the transfer portal, apparently. And so they updated stories and whatnot. And now Demarion Johnson is in the portal the day that it opens. So the freshman defensive tackle who did not see any action this year, kind of behind Ahmad Bro and Dominic McKinley in that class, is in the transfer portal at this point. LSU is sure to lose a few others. Nathan Dibert jumped in the portal today. He handled kickoff duties for LSU back in 2022 and 2023. That, of course, was taken over by Aaron Burrell this year, so Dibert will look for another home for his kicking duties moving forward. Demarion Johnson jumped in the transfer portal as well. Jair Brown just tweeted that he's officially in the portal. So the former Ohio State Buckeye, who was in LSU secondary a little bit this year, is headed that way. And so we'll keep you posted on all that as we continue to move forward here, both on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge as well as LouisianaSports.net, where you can find a lot of our transfer content. I got a story up there right now talking about the biggest needs for LSU in the transfer portal this cycle, so you can go ahead and check that out. All free at LouisianaSports.net. All right, back. We got take or leave it?
Yes, we do.
Cool.
All right. First one. New York Mets signed Juan Soto to a 15-year, $765 million deal. The contract will end when Juan Soto is 41 years old. MLB teams are never going to learn. Take it or leave it.
I will take it. They will never learn that. They're just going to keep. I mean, you're paying for this on the front end. He's 26 years old right now. You figure that gives him like 8 really good years, and then you've got the other 7 on the back end that you'll see what you get. Maybe he's Freddie Freeman, who's in his mid-30s and is one of the best hitters in the sports. Maybe
he's Albert Pujols.
Maybe he's Albert Pujols and completely falls apart. But right now you're just worried about winning right now. And the Mets have a good team that made it to the World Series. They made it to the World Series this year.
Who?
The Mets, did they make it all the way to the World Series? Yeah.
They were the
they
Yankees.
lost
to the Dodgers, yeah.
So they were in the League Championship Series this past year, and they want to add to it. And you've got a lineup that probably still going to have Pete Alonso if they re-sign him. You've got Francisco Lindor, and then you add Juan Soto, who's one of the best hitters in baseball, to it. You don't really care about the last part of that. And Steve Cohen doesn't care about money. He's got more money than he can spend, and he wants to win. And I appreciate people that run their teams like that.
I do. I just don't understand why all 32 MLB teams can't just agree and say, hey, maybe we all should just stop giving these players 15-year contracts. Like, why is there always going to be someone willing to do this when it doesn't make any sense?
Good. It's only for the Bryce Harper, Shohei Ohtani, Juan Sotos of the world.
Well, I know, but still, like, even those guys, like, why is there always going to be a team that's willing to eat 7 or 8 years of $50 million a year and potentially like destroy their franchise for like 8 years?
It won't, because he's got the money to offset it. He doesn't. Okay. He just doesn't care. He's got an endless amount of cash, and he's just going to spend it on trying to win the World Series for the Mets. That's all. He's not worried about getting it's not a situation like where there's a salary cap and you can't offset it. You just have to spend more money on top of it. You're going to go into the luxury tax. You're going to pay a penalty on that. It's just he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the money. It's all about how do I get the best player.
All right, next one here. The Tennessee Volunteers are the new number 1 team in the AP poll in men's college basketball. Take it or leave it.
I'll leave it. I don't think they're the best team in the country. I would probably take Alabama over them. I would probably take Auburn over them. But it's all, I mean, the SEC is just a powerhouse. Kansas lost last night to Missouri from the SEC. I don't know if my message struck home at the end of hour number 1, but I'm just trying to get out in front of this for the LSU fan base. It's going to be a real bumpy go in January and February with this ridiculous schedule in the SEC. It's the best conference that we've ever seen in the sport of college basketball through 2 months, and Tennessee's right in the middle of that. It's been impressive to watch Rick Barnes go through different iterations of great teams with different nucleuses. He had the first run in Tennessee was behind the Grant Williams team. Yep. And then you had kind of the Josiah Jordan-James run there. They had Dalton Connect last year, and like you've still got Zakai Ziegler on this team. But they just they cycle guys out and they keep bringing in really good players. He's a great coach, and they've got a good thing going in Knoxville. That's really an everything school right now. They're good at just about everything there is. They're obviously in the football playoff. They just won the College World Series. Their basketball team's ranked first in the country. They're always good at softball. Their ladies basketball team is not the power it once was, but they're still pretty good. Like They've got some good stuff going there in Knoxville.
All right, next one here. This one's actually in relation to the Juan Soto thing. John Heyman had this. He said, allegedly, Soto was upset earlier in the year by an overzealous Yankees security guy who disallowed a family member and his chef/driver from certain areas. Seinfeld in real life. Take it or leave it.
What in the world? I can't. I mean, I'll leave it. I mean, he still played well, so it obviously didn't make him want to quit. But that can't be the reason he chose the Mets. I think it's got to be the $750 million.
Yeah, probably so.
But whatever that reporting's for.
All right. Last one. Syracuse football head coach Fran Brown says he believes Kyle McCord and other key members of the Orange will play in the Holiday Bowl.
Wow.
Brown said, quote, "We don't opt out around here. We play football. Syracuse will have at least one to opt out. Take it or leave it."
I will take it.
I'll take it.
I will absolutely take it, and I don't think there's anybody that's going to be immune to that. I'm curious to see how things shake out here in Baton Rouge. Things have been fairly quiet outside of Mason Taylor announcing for the draft, and what other player that I'm missing declared for the draft? Will Campbell. So it's been pretty quiet outside of that. I'm still keeping my ear to the ground on Garrett Nussmeier to see how that goes. But the longer you go with silence, the more you have to feel like there's a good chance that he could potentially come back. I'm thinking that things are going to get absolutely nuts over the next 2 weeks with the portal and all the visits that just opened today. Now everybody can take some phone calls and decide kind of where things play out from here. But if you want to read about LSU's biggest transfer portal needs, you can do that at louisianasports.net. If you'd like to hear about LSU's biggest transfer portal needs, you can go back and listen to the first segment of this show on demand, wherever you find your podcast. We are live. Just search Hunt Palmer Show, like, subscribe, rate, and review. That's what I opened with today. What LSU needs to do in the transfer portal. Talked about the Saints, Derek Carr with a broken hand. Where do they go from here, and what things look like yesterday in New Jersey. LSU basketball got a win on Sunday. I briefly discussed that, and we talked college football playoff in the second hour. So check that out on demand if you missed any of it. That's going to drive you home next on After Further Review. He's back in the captain's chair after a couple of days away last week. Hope everybody has a wonderful and safe Monday evening. We're back tomorrow, same time, same place, 1 to 3. The Hunt Palmer Show, 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is that website. Jonathan Carver and his team, fantastic folks to work with. I know insurance is not the most fun thing to talk about, certainly not the most fun thing to pay for, but you may need it. And you never know when that next hurricane's coming, when that car accident's going to happen. You never know when that cyber breach is going to occur, or how expensive that could be to your business. If you don't have a great relationship with your insurance broker right now and you just see what the premium says, sign on the dotted line, and see again next year, maybe give Highland Insurance Group a call. They believe that they should be a part of your organization. The same way you trust your attorney when things go south. The same way you trust your CPA to make sure everything's in the right place. Trust your insurance broker to make sure that you are in the right market with your insurance program. The Highland Insurance Group is an independent agency. They've got access to dozens of markets. They can help you out. Go online. Check them out, HighlandIG.com. They're right here in Baton Rouge, the Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com.